Hi, everyone. We are here today with Stephen Carpenter, who is from Morristown, Tennessee. He is a realtor at Remax and a coach and a manager at Five Rivers CrossFit here in Morristown. So, Stephen, welcome. How are you?
Doing well. How are you, Robert?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. So, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. We appreciate you being here. Stephen has an interesting story. He dealt with with obesity all his childhood life up into his high school years, and we're going to talk about that today. And as I was doing a little research, there are over 3 million people in the United States that are diagnosed as obese every year. So a lot of people whose health is being compromised when it doesn't have to be. So, Stephen, I can't wait to hear your story. So let's get started. So as a child, we were talking a little bit earlier about eating habits. Tell me how you grew up eating.
Yeah, so just like everyone else in the South, we have good Southern fried cooking here. And no one, just like in the westernized society, no one really cares about what they're eating or when they eat it. So if it wasn't Southern fried cooking, it was pizza, spaghetti, and things like that. And so very processed, if you will. And what I mean by that is this food goes through several processes before it hits our dinner plates. And so when I was eating like that, no one told me how much I should be eating, what I should be eating in particular. I used to drink 6 Mountain Dews a day. There was no limit on anything. And if I felt a certain emotion, like if I felt sad, happy, whatever, angry, then food would come in and comfort me, if you will.
So you were an emotional eater.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I was happy, I celebrate with food. If I was upset, then food would help me out, et cetera, always.
I struggle with that myself. I'm an emotional eater too. Um, so how would you tell us how significant this affected you physically?
Well, by the time I reached my high school years, more like into my junior year of high school, I was already over 300 pounds. I was closer to about 315 pounds, something like that. And so it tremendously affected me over the years. I was already at that point probably pre-diabetic. Cholesterol was through the roof, and I'm sure a number of other things I didn't even know about. And so I was just going down a road towards metabolic sickness, if you will. And there was no other way of looking at it.
And that's really early to be pre-diabetic and have high cholesterol in high school.
Yes. Absolutely. And like you said before, it's a shame that this country, all these westernized countries have kind of went towards that anyways, with all the, what we would call Franken fake foods.
Yes. So. And we are seeing, I'm a school teacher, so I know that there are groups that are coming in now and testing our kids' cholesterol and blood pressure and things, because we're seeing high increases in blood pressure and cholesterol in elementary age school children. So that's even scarier and sad. So tell me, would you say that your weight affected your relationships and affected your personality or growing up?
Yes, for sure. I was always not a popular kid, but I did know a lot of people, and I fit in with most groups. I like to make people happy. That's just something I get that from my mother. Thanks, Mom. And so for me, it would only really affect my confidence, which of course is a big thing. It's probably the biggest thing, especially growing up. And so it would stop me from having conversations I wanted to have, and it would just kind of hold me back. So yes, it definitely affected what I wanted to do in certain cases, no doubt.
So tell me, you're in high school
Hmm.
and you make a huge change. What happened?
Well, in high school, what happened was I had gotten almost to the point of graduation. I actually might have been graduated at this point.
Mm.
And what I had done was I was going through a spell of dizziness,
Mm.
and this is the heaviest I had been. And I got to thinking to myself, I'm way too young to be feeling this dizziness, and I had arthritic symptoms through my joints.
Mm.
And again, I was already pre-diabetic and all those different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew at that rate, I couldn't keep that up and expect to live too long, or at least have the quality of life that a young person should have.
Mm-hmm.
And so the change came when I realized that even though I may have these certain idols, people I look up to, that especially in football, because that's what I grew up in. And when I looked at them, I thought, I finally had this epiphany where I thought, I'm not that different from them. We might be a little different genetically and things like that, but these guys separated themselves from the pack because they worked hard. And that's something that we can all control. And so I thought to myself, I can control how much work I put into this, and I can do it. I can lose the weight and I can live right because there are millions of other people that do it right. And
Yes.
I knew that we're different in certain ways, but we're the same in other ways too. And I knew if it had been done before, which most things have, then I could do it too.
So what did you do? What changes did you make?
Very first thing I did was what everybody was doing at that time and followed the Subway diet right out of the gate. And I would go to the local gym here, one of them, and I would run every single day. And I would try to run. I started out with about 30 minutes of running. And so when I ran, even if I had to stop and take a break, I wouldn't count that break time towards my run time.
Mm.
So I had to get 30 minutes total of running, period.
I like
And
it.
I started out. Yeah. And I held myself to that fire. And luckily I'm a stubborn individual as well, that sometimes it takes off to be hard headed. So I get that from my father. Thanks, Dad. And anyways, I just held myself to that fire and did it for several months. And like you and I were talking earlier about kind of eating less and training more, I kind of went for that. And luckily I had a lot to lose, so it did work out.
So you changed how much you moved. You started moving more, but you also changed how you ate. What did you go from? Because we all know, probably most of the people listening to this know all about cornbread and sweet tea and all that good food that you were talking about. What did you start eating?
Okay. So at that point, I did the whole Subway thing, and I was doing like half of a Subway sandwich for the entire day. So it was a lot of lower calorie eating. And then it evolved into what you could refer to as the Paleolithic diet, which is a more natural approach, what you could find food-wise out in the world if you had to grow it. And so once I went to that one, that was the complete game changer. So less processed, more like lean beef, chicken, fish, and as natural as I could get them. So wild caught, grass fed. And so you have your green veggies, hopefully locally sourced and not processed through a ton of, freezing's not the worst thing, but like through a ton of canning and shipments and things like that. And so once I did that, that really, like I said, completely changed things for me.
I'm a big fan of the paleo diet, and that was that made a huge change in my health too. So I agree. That's a game changer for sure. And you said that you started out with the Subway or whatever, and then how did you learn though about the different diets? Like, how did you learn about the paleo, or how did that evolve?
Okay, well, without taking up too much of your time, basically what had happened at that point was I had been going to this local gym. I had met a certain individual. He was tag teaming with another individual to start their own gym, and they did something called CrossFit. And CrossFit is a big proponent of the paleo diet and the zone diet. And it's one of the first things that I learned when I got into that new culture. And it's a great learning tool because paleo will teach you what to eat, whereas zone will teach you how much. So I eventually I started out with paleo to learn how to eat the right things, and then I married the two. So I got one down, and then I brought the other one in. So I then had the quality, then the quantity of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So how would you say, what did that change for you physically? How did that change things when you changed your eating?
Oh, I ended up leaning out altogether. I'd already lost some weight doing the running and lower eating, but I eventually got down to about 210, 215 pounds. And I was really, really lean. I could see definition that wasn't there before. And it just changed things drastically because it made me feel a lot better. And then on top of that, I can just run my machine, if you will, my body a lot better. It's like giving it a premium grade fuel source.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And how would you say that changed your life other than physically, like emotionally or relationally?
Robin, it changed so much that I was in college at the time and I had a 1.7 GPA. And I did not care about my schooling. I didn't care about going to work. And once, this sounds kind of cliche, but as I was learning that hard work would lead to better and better results, making me if you will, a better person, then I applied that to different aspects of my life. So it went into school, it went into work. Like everything I do matters, no matter what it is that I'm doing. And so I took that 1.7, turned it into a 3.1, 3.2 GPA within a semester to a year. And it was just able to turn me a complete 180. I was hanging out with the wrong people. We were into drugs and things like that. And I don't mind sharing that with you. And so from that point, it just completely turned me around, and I started hanging out with better people and acting right and achieving things that I didn't think I could do, and I wasn't even trying to do because I didn't think they were achievable.
It sounds like you completely changed who you are, like a dramatic change.
Yes, yes, and it came down to, obviously it's more than just diet and nutrition, and that I was hanging around the right people that had those similar philosophies, if you will. And of course, if you can incubate yourself with the right people, you definitely blossom into what you should be.
Yes. So thinking about our audience, what would you say was your biggest obstacle in making this change?
Well, I guess for me, the biggest obstacle would have been my mindset, my mentality. I needed to kind of study the right things to eat, if you will, but just creating habits was the hardest thing, more than likely. And so I was telling you before, motivation is such a fleeting thing. And so once you're able to create a habit, it doesn't even have to be something you're crazy about doing. It just has to be there. And so the biggest thing was creating habits whenever that motivation would run out. And so that was the biggest thing. And being able to not only do that, but let it be such a habitual thing that even if I were tested by other, maybe people's ways of eating or whatever, that I could withstand it. And that happened all the time when I first started, all the time.
So I feel like a lot of people feel like they don't have enough willpower, but would you say that your habits became stronger than, it wasn't a willpower issue, it was a habit issue?
Yes. So I started out just like everyone else. I said, I can do this. I had the motivation, but I had to ingrain those things. And I was telling you a little earlier, I'm hard-headed. That it helped. It really helped to be hard-headed.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's obviously kind of hard at the start, but once you get going and you start seeing those results, it's like a chain reaction. You're like, I want more of those results. It's just like anything else. And so, and again, I was surrounded by the right people, and that helps out too. It gives you not necessarily people to chase, but it gives you a kind of a guiding light, if you will.
So what would you say to other people who are living with obesity and dealing with all of the side effects or the health issues that go along with that? What would you say to them?
My biggest overlaying message would be that their existence and their proper existence, as in the healthy version of them, is so beneficial to other people, not just them. And if they can be the best version of themselves, they can not only help themselves, but they can help their families, they can help their communities. It's an inward thing that blossoms and becomes bigger than you would think. And I know that sounds maybe a little naive, if you will, but it's true. You can't, and because most of these people we're talking about, in my opinion, are helpers, they're givers,
Mm-hmm.
and they put themselves last.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't understand that they could be better helpers and bigger givers if they would take care of themselves first. You can't pour from an empty cup, correct?
I love that. And that's so true. A lot of that's a hard thing to change, but it is. You're just like you said, that habit. I just finished reading Atomic Habits. Have you read that?
I've read it. It's been a long time since I've read that, but
Has
I've
it?
read it before. Mm-hmm.
So good. Well, one thing that I want to share that I have heard you saying when you were in high school and still today is how important having a mentor is in your journey. So, um, so think about your why, get some motivation, get a
Sure.
game plan, even if it doesn't work. Start a game plan and adjust as necessary, and get some people around you who are going to lift you up and pull you up with them. I think
Sure.
that's what I've heard you saying, and that's a beautiful message, Stephen. So I appreciate you being here with us today, and I appreciate you sharing your story. It's going to give a lot of people inspiration and courage to maybe take the first step and get started, even if that is just a small first step. It might not be a giant leap, just a move in the right direction.
Sure. Moving a mountain, you start out by moving stones first, right?
That's exactly right. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. And I can't wait to see where this takes you.
I appreciate you having me, and I hope it helps as many individuals as we can get to.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Robin.